What if the most powerful nation in the 20th century had chosen not to join the most devastating war in human history? What if the United States had stayed neutral in World War II? Would Hitler have won? Would the Soviet Union have collapsed? Would nuclear weapons still exist? In this alternate history, we explore a world where America never enters the war. No D-Day and no Hiroshima. No American tanks in Berlin. Let's rewind history and take a different path. In real history, America entered World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Before that, President Franklin D. Roosevelt supported the Allies with weapons and supplies, but stayed out of direct combat. But what if Pearl Harbor never happened? Or America still refused to join the war? In this alternate timeline, the US remains officially neutral. It continues to trade but avoids any military conflict. So, what happens next? Without American troops, Britain stands alone against Nazi Germany. The Lend-Lease Act still helps the British with supplies, but no American soldiers land in Europe. Without D-Day, Hitler doesn't face a Western front. The British army is stretched thin in North Africa and defending the homeland. The Luftwaffe, German Air Force, renews its bombing campaign over British cities. Could Britain survive alone? Maybe for a while, but without American support, Germany could shift more focus toward defeating the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union remains the biggest obstacle for Hitler. In our timeline, American supplies helped the USSR fight back, and while Stalin's army was massive, it was poorly equipped in early years. In this alternate history with no American support, the Soviets struggle more. Leningrad may fall. Moscow could be captured. Would Hitler finally crush the USSR? It's possible. With more troops freed from the Western Front, Germany could have pushed deeper into Soviet territory, maybe even reaching the oil fields of Baku. That would be a game changer. If the USSR collapses, Hitler controls most of Europe. France, Poland, the Balkans, and now even Russia. Nazi Germany becomes a continental superpower. Millions die in the Holocaust. Resistance movements continue. But without a major military force to stop them, the Nazis grow stronger. Would Hitler turn toward the Middle East next, or try to force Britain into surrender? His dream of a 1,000-year Reich would feel possible in this world. What about the Pacific? If the US stays out of the war, Japan faces less resistance. It captures more of China, controls Southeast Asia, and maybe even invades Australia or India. The Allies, mostly Britain and its colonies, fight hard, but without American aircraft carriers and naval power, Japan becomes dominant. The Japanese Empire spreads across the Pacific. Would there be a future war between Germany and Japan? Maybe, but for now, both Axis powers rise. Here's a surprising twist. Without the US in the war, would the atomic bomb still be created? The Manhattan Project was funded by US fears that Germany might build a nuclear weapon first. In this alternate world, maybe there's no rush or no project at all, which means no Hiroshima, no Nagasaki, no nuclear age, at least not yet. The Cold War, as we know it, might never happen. By 1950, the world could look like this. Nazi Germany dominates Europe and parts of Russia. Imperial Japan controls East Asia and the Pacific. The British Empire hangs on, but is weakened and isolated. The US is still rich and powerful, but neutral, and perhaps seen as cowardly or selfish by history. Global culture, politics, and even science would be different. The internet, space race, United Nations, civil rights movement, all might be delayed or never happen. In this alternate 21st century, German might be spoken in Paris. Asia might be ruled under Japanese imperial culture. America might still be a global economic power, but not a military one. Would this be a peaceful world? Maybe. But more likely, it would be a world filled with fear, censorship, fascism, and constant surveillance. Freedom, as we know it, might be a rare thing. History isn't just about what happened, it's about what could have happened. America's decision to join World War II changed the world forever. But in this timeline, the choice not to act led to a darker world, one where tyranny triumphed and freedom was crushed. Let us know in the comments. Do you think the Allies could have still won without America? And what other what-if moments in history would you like us to explore next? Subscribe for more alternate history from the real history. Until next time, question everything. Expanded part. The decision for the United States to remain neutral would not only shift the military and political landscape of the 1940s, but would ripple far into the decades that followed. To fully grasp the magnitude of this alternate history, we must examine the intricate interplay of geopolitics, military strategies, societal changes, and technological advancements that hinged upon America's involvement. First, let's delve deeper into Britain's precarious position in this scenario. Before the US entered the war, Britain stood as the last major power actively resisting Nazi Germany in Europe. Winston Churchill's leadership galvanized the British people during the Blitz, relentless bombing raids by the Luftwaffe, intended to break British morale. With American help restricted to supplies only, the Royal Air Force would face overwhelming odds. The absence of American pilots and resources might mean the RAF's defeat, leaving British cities devastated and forcing the government to consider peace talks with Hitler. Such negotiations would have dire consequences. A Britain at peace under Nazi terms would alter the balance of power in Europe completely. Moreover, Britain's overseas territories, including India, Africa, and the Caribbean, would find themselves vulnerable. Japan's imperial ambitions in Asia would face less opposition without American naval power projecting strength across the Pacific. The Indian independence movement, already gaining momentum, would confront a British Empire under strain and less able to manage colonial unrest. This could accelerate decolonization, but under vastly different circumstances, perhaps under Axis supervision, or more chaotic transitions. Turning eastward, the Soviet Union's fate becomes a central question. The real-world Eastern Front was the largest and bloodiest theatre of the war, accounting for millions of casualties on both sides. The harsh Russian winters, vast territories, and brutal combat slowed German advances, but ultimately the USSR pushed back. In this alternate timeline, deprived of American Lend-Lease aid, including food, vehicles, and ammunition, Soviet forces would struggle to replenish and maintain their massive army. Without sufficient resources, Soviet industrial capacity would falter. Factories in Western Russia, often relocated to the Urals and Siberia during the real war, might not operate at full strength. The morale of Soviet soldiers and civilians could crumble under continuous pressure. The siege of Leningrad, which in our history lasted nearly 900 days, may end sooner with German capture of the city, allowing the Nazis to solidify control over northwest Russia. If Moscow falls, the Soviet government's survival would be in question. Stalin might face overthrow or flight, and a German puppet regime could be established, shattering the communist hold on Eastern Europe. The capture of the oil-rich Caucasus region would secure vital fuel for German armoured divisions and aircraft. Historically, Germany failed to capture these fields, which limited their operational capacity in late war. Here, with full access to Soviet resources, Germany's war machine would continue unimpeded, strengthening its dominance. The Holocaust's scale could also shift in this scenario. Without the distraction of multiple fronts and stronger resistance, Nazi atrocities may escalate more rapidly. The extermination camps would operate with even fewer interruptions. Resistance movements in occupied countries might be crushed before gaining momentum, especially with Britain and the USSR weakened or defeated. The world might witness even greater human tragedy. Across the Pacific, Japan's unchecked expansionism would reshape Asia dramatically. The invasion of China, which historically lasted for years with massive casualties and destruction, could intensify. Japan's control of resource-rich territories like the Dutch East Indies, modern Indonesia, would go uncontested. Plans to invade India, the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, become more feasible. The strategic importance of India, not only as a resource hub, but also as a base for Allied operations, means its loss would cripple resistance in Asia. Australia, historically a key Allied base, could face invasion or be forced into neutrality. The United States' absence means no Pacific naval bases from which to launch counterattacks. The so-called Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, Japan's vision of an Asia under its leadership, might be fully realized. In terms of technological development, the absence of the Manhattan Project is profound. Nuclear research before and during World War II was closely linked to fears of German nuclear advancement. If Germany had not been sufficiently challenged or had more resources, they might have prioritized nuclear weapons. But historical evidence suggests Nazi nuclear efforts were limited and disorganized. Without US funding and scientists, the atomic bomb's creation is delayed, if it occurs at all. This absence delays or prevents the nuclear age, altering post-war power dynamics. The Cold War, defined by nuclear deterrence between the US and USSR, might not materialize. Instead, prolonged conventional conflicts or proxy wars might dominate global politics. Culturally and socially, American neutrality could affect global leadership in human rights and democracy. The US emerged from World War II as a beacon of liberal values, spearheading the creation of the United Nations and promoting civil rights. Without this involvement, the international system might be dominated by authoritarian regimes. Civil liberties could be suppressed more widely, with fewer global champions advocating freedom. The space race, a hallmark of Cold War competition, might never ignite. The scientific progress accelerated by military needs, and competition may slow down. Technologies that stemmed from war efforts, jet engines, computers, radar, could develop at a slower pace or differently. Finally, the question of how the world perceives America in this alternate history is significant. Remaining neutral in the face of fascist aggression could tarnish its moral standing. Allies might view the US as isolationist or self-interested, a superpower unwilling to take responsibility. This could influence alliances, trade relations, and the global order for decades. To conclude, the US staying out of World War II changes everything. The Axis powers rise unchecked. Europe and Asia fall under totalitarian rule. Nuclear weapons vanish or emerge too late, and global progress stalls. While some aspects might be more peaceful, most of history's gains in freedom, science, and cooperation would be at risk. This alternate timeline serves as a sobering reminder of how pivotal decisions shape the world's destiny.